Hello and welcome to the programme. The Netherlands and Australia had a first meeting with Russia to discuss who is responsible for the downing of flight MH17 back in 2014. The joint investigation team confirmed that Russia is responsible for the catastrophe as the MH17 plane was shot down with a Russian-made BUK missile. Now, to talk more about the ongoing investigation process, we are joined in the studio today by Eugene Yaroshenko, an international relations expert at the Democracy House think tank. Eugene, thank you very much for coming in today.
Good evening, thank you for inviting.
As we mentioned, the Dutch officials, they were in Australia recently, and they were conducting and proposing a way forward with the investigation of MH17, which is separate from the joint investigation team report to a certain extent. So before we talk further about this, we have a soundbite from that particular meeting from earlier this month. So let's take a look.
In May last year, our two countries took the decision to hold Russia responsible under international law for its role in the downing of flight MH17. Following this step, we entered into contact with Russia. Talks have started between Netherlands, Australia and Russia. A first trilateral meeting has recently taken place. We cannot go into the content of this process because confidentiality is vital here. But I can say this, we remain committed to achieving truth, justice and accountability.
So there we go. That was the Dutch Foreign Minister, Stef Blok, speaking earlier this month. And what was very interesting was this aspect of confidentiality at the meeting itself. So why do you think that was? And since Russia, in their eyes, has been already held responsible for the downing of MH17 with a lot of evidence to back it up, why do you think these meetings are happening, and what could be the future process?
Well, there are many complicated and sometimes controversial developments over MH17. First, there is a joint investigation team which composed of 5 countries: the Netherlands, Australia, Malaysia, Belgium and Ukraine. As you see, Russia is not involved in the joint investigation team. However, it is pretty clear that Russia was highly involved in this tragedy by means of providing this BUK anti-aircraft missile to pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine. So it is pretty clear that it is hard to deny this fact. However, Russia plays a crucial role because back in 2015, the UN Security Council was considering a resolution about the establishment of the International Criminal Tribunal for MH17. It could have been established but for Russia's veto. It was the same kind of tribunal that was made in 1990s for events in the former Yugoslavia for Rwandan genocide. However, this moment indicated that Russia has an interest in blocking this tribunal, which gives grounds to consider that Russia was highly involved.
So what do you think then that Australia and the Netherlands are trying to get out of these meetings with Russia?
Well, as the Dutch foreign minister said, these diplomatic talks are confidential, so it is they are not publicly covered. I guess it can be some sensitive topics, some sensitive issues for Russia. Like there cannot be ruled out that 3 countries, I mean representatives of 3 countries of Russia, Australia and the Netherlands may be discussing how to make Russia pay remuneration for damages to relatives of this.
Yeah, but if that would happen, then that would basically mean that they admit to being involved in this, and this is what they don't want to do.
Yeah, but at the same time, helping Russia to save its face, like to find this complicated compromise.
But I don't know if that's true. I mean, if you look at various UN Security Council meetings, they constantly veto what is being discussed when it comes to Ukraine and this investigation in particular.
Yeah, but
when it means like saving face, they're already denying what is happening.
Well, there is one option which I do not rule out. How it can look like. It can look like that behind in these confidential talks, Russia may announce that it is providing financial support in order to help investigation. So Russia claims that it contributes to investigation, it doesn't block, but it publicly does not announce that it is involved.
So we don't know what was said in these meetings, but there is a possibility that one option that Russia could be offering financial remuneration to get involved in helping investigate what happened. But do you think this is a case, in your opinion, of smoke and mirrors, given the fact that, for example, we have Bellingcat, who have traced this BUK missile system from Kursk to the Russia-Ukrainian border over the course of a couple of days? What do you think the Russian strategy is here?
Russia has two goals, how to its exit strategy from these troubles. First, it is to lay the responsibility for this incident on Ukraine. There were active attempts immediately after the landing. However, they did not prove successful. And second goal is try to prevent from further reputational losses. In this regard, Russia may be interested in having some diplomatic activity in this area, so that Russia would not be considered in the international arena not only as a perpetrator, but as a country that blocks investigation.
And how do you think, if any effect, it would have on the court cases which are going on right now?
Well, it is interesting because there are several potential ways how it may further go into national or international courts. First, some relatives of victims announced that they are planning to file a lawsuit to the European Court for Human Rights. It is disputable decision because the European Court for Human Rights admits only cases which, after all national legal remedies, were exhausted. And it is a question if the European Court for Human Rights will admit them. Another possible scenario is that the International Criminal Court will investigate and then prosecute possible perpetrators. Because Ukraine accepted its jurisdiction over the events in Donbass, and if the prosecutors of the International Criminal Court find any evidences, any perpetrators, like senior Russian political or military commanders, they may be issued with an arrest warrant, and at least they will have troubles in moving somewhere abroad.
Yeah. And a while back, the Dutch chief prosecutor, Fred Westerbeck, he said that his office had identified about 100 persons who were involved in, who are, actually I'll rephrase that, persons of interest in this particular case. So what do you think could actually force Russia, if anything, to extradite the suspects involved, or who are suspected of being involved?
I guess it will depend on the position, on the rank of possible perpetrators. Let it be middle-ranked officers or supreme military commanders. But in any way, it will be very hard for Russia to prove that it was that it were certain individuals who were found guilty, but it was not the state responsibility, because this BUK missile was delivered through the international border, and it means that Russia is responsible, as it was not controlling its part of the border, or tolerating the movement of military equipment through the border.
And what I thought was interesting, before we started talking, I had a quick look at the official website for MH17, the place where people can submit evidence and photos and videos and that sort of thing. And this is by far a finished investigation. They're still looking for witnesses, perhaps not even people directly involved, but even family members, even people who might have seen something. So do you think that this investigation will continue on for years and years now?
I guess it will last not only for years, but for decades. Just take a look at an incident which happened in Scotland back in 1980s. The perpetrators were found guilty, and the then Libyan government, headed by Muammar Gaddafi, agreed to cooperation with international judicial institutions, and it took around 20 years. But let's compare a global influence which Libya had at the time and which Russia has on global stage.
Okay, well, Eugene, thank you very much for coming into our studio today and talking about the case, and obviously we'll keep an eye on any developments. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a big pleasure for me.
Thank you. That was Eugene Yaroshenko, an international relations expert at the Democracy House think tank. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more here on UATV.